Is that a packet? Why are you doing it like?
Oh, because there's 3 pages.
Oh,
Right.
Mr. Renault.
How are you?
You guys all here, everybody online here? Sweet. Success. Success, Katrina.
You're good.
I don't know about that. Thank you. Let's not get carried away.
No, you're good.
Thanks.
Oops, sorry. Yep. Thank you. I have 2. Am I supposed to have 2?
4, there's 4 pages, so they're 2 sides.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Oops, sorry, can you pass that for me? There you go.
Thank you.
And then that one. And then this. I didn't do the nonprofit one. That's okay. Because we were gonna throw that out anyways.
Yep. I don't think you did. Okay.
All right, Jerry, whenever you're ready.
I'm ready now. Go ahead. Is the stuff you're handing out the stuff we got?
It's the stuff that was emailed over the weekend and the stuff that I just sent before I drove the 45 minutes to get here.
But nothing, nothing new. Okay, good enough. Let's go.
Nothing new except for last minute stuff earlier today.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Okay. So today we are going to go over some of the land use amendments that we've been working on. Last time we met, I believe we went over corrections regarding connections to the public sewer. So that was the one where we talked about the fact that it really should be the Board of Selectmen who are approving waivers to connect to the public sewer and not the planning board in order to be consistent with the sewer ordinance. I have also emailed that to Brian, and I believe he has read it and might have sent me back a couple of comments. We talked about the changing of the zoning designation, the setbacks to Little Echo Lake, because it's a man-made lake and the DEP does not require a 100-foot setback. We talked about unregistered motor vehicles, and we talked about excavation and fill, which we have also reviewed with Andy Hamilton, and we'll probably be making a few tweaks to the definition. So in that version, we had put in the description, not the description, but the section, whatever it is, 6B7 at the top. We had an examples. That's really what we're adding. So we should really be adding those examples to the definition of excavation. And we may need to tweak the definition of excavation a little bit because Andy wasn't happy with that, with our definition. So anyway, that's where we are with those ones. And so today we're going to be talking about a couple of different things, including individual private campsites, clarification on marine structures needing conditional use approval, clarification on nonprofit uses, and clarification on residential dwelling units that are in the table of allowed uses, responsibility for notifications, Section 6B 11.3 amendments for residential dwelling units and accessory dwellings, and CEO permit review timelines. So which ones do you guys have? And what's the first one that people here in this room have in front of them?
5A.
5A. What's the title say?
Section 5, conditional use approval.
5-4.
Oh yeah, 5-4.
Yep. Okay.
5A,
So conditional
5-4.
use approval. Yep.
Same thing.
Let's get to that. Conditional use approval. There's an X at the top.
It's got a piece of yellow highlighting at the bottom paragraph.
Yep.
That's what's being changed, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now I just need to find my copy of that.
It's actually on the table in front of you now.
Right. Yes. All right, so this one is related to the LD 2003 changes that we've talked about quite a while ago? Is that the one
No,
you're talking
this is
about?
one-
You said 5A? Oh, not the right one.
No. This one,
This one. Conditional approval. All right, well, this one's easy.
that's what, just saying.
Why she picked it.
That's perfect. Yeah, this one is just making a change in the ordinance, to specify that it's really the town that sends notifications for conditional use approval rather than the planning board. Everybody online clear?
The planning board
About
doesn't
that one.
sign it, right?
No,
For public hearing.
the planning board signs it. What
The town actually mails it.
the town is responsible
Okay.
for sending the notices.
Okay, perfect. I'm good with that.
All right,
6B point.
is there a letter at the top? No.
No.
Of course not.
6B11?
Standard, yeah,
6B11,
6B9.
6B9. All right, so this is individual private campsites, 6B9. So this was for everybody online.
The one you just
What was that?
said. Yeah, I got it.
Great. So 6B9, the issue we're having is that the current version of the ordinance has references to recreational vehicles. But the definition isn't clear enough that individual private campsites kind of include also recreational vehicles. So we're going to do two things. One is make a couple of adjustments to at the top, you can see where I actually split where it says one campsite per lot existing on the effective date of this ordinance was actually like those 1 and 2 are actually the same wording. I just split them into 2 numbers, so it's a little more clear. And then at the end, under the definition, we're adding a new definition of individual private campsites, which doesn't specifically reference recreational vehicles, but it does specify that things like gravel pads, parking areas, fireplaces and other things. So this definition is actually much more consistent with the shoreline zoning definition, which is a good thing. And then the only other thing that I have to add to this draft is a updated definition of recreational vehicle. Jared.
And this was my question, a gravel pad and a parking area, could that be poured concrete or?
Well, a gravel pad, probably not.
It's a
but
gravel pad,
Yeah.
but then
Yep.
it's, but
Yeah.
then it says parking area. Does that mean a concrete slab or just a pull off on the dirt?
Says no.
Pardon me?
It looks like on number 5, it says will not be located on any type of permanent foundation except for gravel, no concrete.
The vehicle, but what about the method that people get to the vehicle?
Don't know. Don't care.
You might. You want a
Well,
paved parking pad next to your gravel pad for your camper.
And your RV.
Yeah, I just wondered if we need both of them or if you could just say a gravel pad and take the parking area out. Cause so that somebody doesn't pour a concrete slab and say that's my parking area.
Yep.
I think this pertains to, if you're renting out your yard for
So you're
a
not, you can't,
private campsite, not for storing your own RV at your house.
yeah, I don't think recreational or individual private campsites are not like a campground. So it's, the intent really is to allow people on their property to have a campsite. that
Oh,
they
yeah,
can-
I don't have a problem with that. I just wondered if it was gonna become problematic if people call a parking area a cement parking, asphalt parking area.
Do you have any thoughts on that, Kim?
Well, I mean, it's specific to gravel pads. And it's just like Alan said, it's permanent foundation. That's intended, yes, for the RV, but as far as parking, you can have driveways, you can have parking areas. This as long as they meet setbacks from the shoreline, water body, but they can go right up to the side property line.
If you were gonna put a outside barbecue at your campsite, Could you have a laid brick patio around it?
If it meets setbacks.
Okay,
And keep in mind, these individual private campsites are intended to be temporary.
oh, I know, yeah.
Is fireplace one word?
It might be.
I said fire pit.
Yes, it is. Fire pit is 2 words.
Are we pitting or placing?
Well, we were gonna do pit, and then we looked at the definition from,
The
Let's see.
fireplace, two-word fireplace would be somewhere there was a fire.
I'd
That's
say
right.
fire pit. I'd say fire pit.
we'll change it to fire pit. And fire
Well,
pit
that's what
will be,
typically people have.
will be 2 words.
Right, it's 2 words.
The place with the pit is.
Pit of fire.
All right. Individual private campsites. Are we good with that?
Mhm.
Yep.
Excellent. What's next, Katrina?
6C.7. Section 5, conditional use approval. It's got pink highlights.
Pink highlights.
Marine
Probably
structure.
comments, marine structure,
Marine and freshwater structure performance
Typically used
standards.
for salt mill,
yep. All right,
I got
so this one right here,
67.
I think I sent this out over the weekend and really wanted to have, before we iron out some of the details on this one. Just wanted to have more of a policy discussion, sort of in line with what we talked about today, Kim.
Yep.
Which is for marine structures, if you look at this section. It's called marine and freshwater structure performance standards, but the majority of the standards, if not all the standards, are actually marine structures. So what I would like to do, for clarity's sake, is actually have 2 sections. So there'll be like a 6C7 and a 6C8, or I don't know the exact how we're going to do the numbering, but one will be freshwater structure performance standards and the other will be marine structure performance standards. And as a matter of policy, I think the way that we currently operate in town, and this is what I just want some clarity on, is that if you do a freshwater structure, the big difference is we don't typically see permanent freshwater structures. They're usually just a dock and a float that comes out
Yes.
in the season. So they're normally not even permitted through the town. They're just the DEP, if that. If you have a house on a lake, you just put a dock and float out, it's temporary, it doesn't even need a permit through the DEP. So I would like to separate the 2 and then just have marine structure performance standards so it's more clear. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And so then the policy would be no permanent freshwater structures. Does that make sense?
Isn't that what number 6 says on the second page?
Yeah, we're moving that to the top too. Yep. So we're good with that. So it's not like a full change. So then we're gonna remove the prohibitions really should be first. So under even marine structures, if there's other prohibitions, we're gonna just take the order out and move those to the top and just order those. So things that are prohibited will be to begin with, and then the standards will follow the things that are actually you're allowed. I went down a rabbit hole on this one, so I just wanted to double check my understanding with you guys to make sure that I'm not saying something about marine structures that you don't want to follow through with policy wise.
How is this gonna impact those people that will be coming in soon to rebuild their old docks?
Well, that is a wholly different question. The standards won't change. But depends on what they come in to ask to do with the repair of something that got damaged.
If it's like completely gone, it's gonna go planning.
Yeah, so there's a difference between repair and replace.
Correct.
Depends, but yes.
Keep the same footprint, repair the things that are missing.
Sometimes the only thing that left is the.
Then that.
And they're spelled differently.
I would say the question for us tonight is the policy isn't changing. We're just reordering the words. there's,
mean,
I think it's a much more complicated question to ask. Hey, what do we do now that we have all this damage? Because it really depends individually on the particular project.
Yes.
So
Oh,
that,
yeah,
if people ask, that would be my answer.
okay.
No, do you need a freshwater structure definition or no?
We should probably add one if we're gonna separate them out,
Okay.
yes.
They would be what, just non-tidal bodies of water?
Yeah. Something like that. So we're talking about, yeah, piers, not even piers, probably docks, floats. Extending over non-tidal bodies of water, or something like that. So that makes sense to everybody?
Mhm.
Great. Katrina,
Yes, sir.
what's next?
So next one is, hang dun, dun, dun. Section 6, standards for uses, permits and approvals, 6B.11 lots. Page 1 of 3.
All right. So this one is the one that's related to LD 2003. And we had talked about this generally when we were talking about things for LD 2003. And as we all know, LD 2003 requires that all lots have the ability to have an accessory dwelling unit. When we talked about this before, the idea was we want to make sure it's lots that only have a residential dwelling, one family. So a single family dwelling unit. And what I try to do in this section, and Kim and I have been kind of working on this. I probably need to tweak the description in 6B11(3). 2B a little bit more.
Yeah.
To be more clear that a duplex, or as we're calling it in this town, a residential dwelling 2-family, is treated the same as a residential family,
One bed.
1-family, a residential dwelling 1-family.
Right.
Also, when doing this, I still feel that we ought to revise the terminology altogether and get rid of this whole idea of residential dwelling 1-family, residential dwelling 2-family, and just call them what we already call them, which is single family dwelling unit,
And
duplex, multifamily. But I'm not sure we want to do that this time around. But in principle, it wouldn't change anything necessarily. Unless in the duplex, you get rid of because the traditional duplex definition is a structure that is kind of self-contained, separated by a wall. But in Mount Desert, so it would be the same structure, but in Mount Desert, we have this provision that allows you to do like a breezeway to connect.
breezeway.
When you
And
call
that's
it
essentially a duplex,
residential dwelling 2-family,
right?
it conjures up a vision of 2 families living in one house,
Yes,
as opposed to what generally is accepted as a duplex, meaning 2 separate living units in one combined building.
correct. I like
So
I
prefer
could
duplex
draft it,
myself.
redraft everything and just say, for this change, and just call it what we should call it, which is a
Single
single
family,
family,
duplex,
duplex,
and
and
multifamily.
multifamily. Yep,
I agree.
that to me makes much more sense intuitively, because that's immediately where you go when you talk about it. It's like really hard to keep it straight.
Yeah.
And then I could eliminate the other change that we're gonna do.
And the simpler we keep it, the easier it is for the general citizenry to understand what it is they're reading and voting on.
And what I'll do is keep the definitions the same, but I'll just use the term differently.
Yeah.
So you can still, so we're not making a policy change unless you guys tell me you want to, that eliminates that ability to have 2 structures connected by a breezeway and still call it a duplex, which is not really a duplex, but
Right.
it's 2 single family dwellings connected by a breezeway. So I won't change that policy. Does that work for everybody? Yep.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna add single family, DU. Duplex, multifamily. All right, so in this version, the other thing is the multifamily still doesn't, the multifamily unit still requires for every unit to have all the dimensional requirements. So with a duplex, you know, if you're in a 1 acre zone, you can put a duplex in. If you want to do a multifamily, you have to have 3 acres. That makes sense? And we can work on that policy if you want to, which I think you should, but maybe in a different context. Because I think there are probably some areas where you could have a multifamily unit and the lot size really shouldn't affect anything. But I can see that conjuring up some discussion that probably not ready for.
Yeah, gee, I wonder where you'd be talking about.
I don't know where. All right. And then number 3 on that is where we're taking the accessory dwelling units. So in the current ordinance, there's an exemption that allows for accessory dwelling units on lots that are conforming lots. The state statute says any lot, we're changing it to any lot, and then the standards underneath there are pretty much from LD 2003, and they say they require a minimum size, but not a maximum size, and I just kept the 75%. So it's pretty similar. So this is supposed to be clarifying that also on only lots that have single family dwellings can you have an accessory dwelling. So you can't get like a duplex and then have 2 accessory units.
No,
Yes,
where we reference minimum lot area, we got minimum lot size. Should we just change it to size, or that means everywhere?
I'll just change it to area. I'll just correct it back to area.
Yeah.
Thanks for picking that up. Probably the less changes, the better. Okay, any questions on Gail?
We all know that the purpose of these changes is to try to improve the affordability and availability of housing. And would you remind me, please, where it is we grapple in the ordinance, we grapple with that question vis-a-vis not allowing all of this additional building to take place simply to do rentals, short-term rentals?
Well, there's nowhere in the ordinance that tackles that, nowhere in the land use ordinance that allows this to happen simply to do short-term rentals. There's no language in the ordinance that deals with short-term rentals at all.
It will be the proposed short-term rental ordinance that will deal with that, correct?
There is, yes, the proposed short-term rental ordinance will create some standards around short-term rentals. One, so it does 2 things. One, it creates 2 different terms. One is a short-term rental, which is basically a version of like if I owned the house and I live there year round and I want to rent it out as a short-term rental, I can do that. And then there's something called a vacation rental, which is essentially if I just came to Mount Desert and decided to start buying property and renting it, that's a vacation rental. And there's a separate process, separate set of standards there. Mostly they're the same, but that one is going to be a little more restrictive in the draft. So in the land use ordinance, we have to create a land use category, I believe, called short-term rental or vacation rental or something in order to try to figure out how you place restrictions on it per use. I have to think about that, Gail. I think it's obviously worth discussing. It's not covered in this draft.
Can I suggest that there also be a category of renting houses that are not year-round houses anyway?
Yep, that's actually something that we have to discuss for the short-term rental ordinance, and that should be maybe need to be a category called, like, I think I came up with a term the other day. It's a seasonal seasonally restricted cottage is what I've heard it called. So if it's like a seasonal camp and you just rent it short term, that's like, it could be a different thing. Too, in addition to, so it'll be 3 different categories. I actually think we've heard quite a few comments about it might be a good add.
It is quite a different thing.
Yep.
Because some of the rental cottages, well, most of them in Hall Quarry anyway, can't be open in the winter.
Correct.
You can't even get access down over the hill.
Yep.
And the water lines are all above ground, so they're closed up, shut up, drained. And
Yep. So I haven't like figured out how to define that, but I think that I've heard this in other communities too. And I was really struggling with like trying to figure out, okay, how do we capture that comment? Cause there is a difference between like taking a year-round house as an investment property and turning it into a short-term rental versus like just having a camp that was never used for year-round and turning it into a short-term rental. The land use implications are different too.
right.
To be fair, like there are a lot of those camps that are like, hey, I just threw my, the old steel drum in the ground and that's where all the septic system goes. So like that, I think is the real concern for those
Right.
types of uses, so.
Well, conversion too from seasonal,
Right.
that also requires to put in a septic system.
Yep, but I would also say,
Change, the house and stuff.
yep, so I would say like once, again, I haven't integrated those standards into the other draft yet, but that to me would be like, if you're converting your seasonally restricted cottage to a year-round use, then it isn't a seasonally restricted cottage anymore. and it
Right, goes
kicks
into another category.
Yeah. Yeah, so, anyway, yeah, good question, Meredith, thank you. I'll probably bring that up tonight. Yes. Okay.
Mhm.
Anything else on this one? Great, Katrina.
Guess what?
What's next, Katrina?
Section 7, code enforcement officer,
Okay,
7-3.
7.3.
Yeah,
7.5.
so Kim's gonna start installing stuff.
I believe this one this is where it talks about permits.
You also have the word install.
Yes, I added the word install. So for this one, aside from adding the word install under permits required, the primary objective here is to clarify the timelines for reviewing permits for completeness and then issuing a permit. It's not, the policy doesn't change, so currently there's a 30-day process where you get the CEO determines whether or not an application is complete, or the planning board or whatever does that. And then there's 10 days after the completeness determination to issue a permit or denial, approval with conditions, or approval. And this just clarifies that a little bit more. So it doesn't change the timelines, it just changes it around a little bit. And so essentially what I did was I moved number 3 up above the referrals part, which is where the conditional use approval gets referred back to the code officer to issue any appropriate permits. Pretty clear.
Does our land use zoning ordinance use the word working days or business days? Are they the same?
Good question.
Thank you. I asked that question last meeting.
Well, I didn't create that part. It uses working days.
Right,
I think that would be business days.
yes,
Should we
but
call it business days?
I just didn't know if within the whole ordinance, is it the same? Are we using the word working or business, or are they?
It's not in there.
Okay. I don't care which one we use, but it should be the same all the way through.
So I'll change it to business days because that's more clear.
Mhm.
Is Saturday a working day? It is for
Just
me.
No,
Sunday happiness.
Yeah,
0 days are working days.
well, that's awesome.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Someday.
Congratulations.
Right, Joe? We'll get there soon.
Someday.
It was gainfully employed.
Okay,
And we'll save the sewer for last.
okay, the sewer one. This one is the availability of public sewer, where, again, currently the Board of Selectmen, in the sewer ordinance, the Board of Selectmen are supposed to adopt, grant a waiver. But an exception to connecting. So there is a requirement in the town of Mount Desert where if you're within 200 feet of the public sewer, you have to connect to the public sewer. There's a lot of good reasons for that. Only one of which is that you want to have more users sharing the rates on the sewer system. Secondly, it's always often better to connect to town sewer because you have more capacity and all that good stuff.
Sharing the rates.
We don't have
Sharing
rates.
rates is good.
You don't have rates.
We don't have rates.
That's why you would do it though.
Yeah, I get a rebate, right?
Oh my God.
Big bucks.
The land of milk and honey,
I'd say, it's like, when do the unicorns come out over here?
pretty soon.
What time of year? It's in the winter time?
It's not a rebate, it's a grant.
Anyway, so this one, basically just makes it consistent with the, sewer ordinance that the board should issue the exception, not the planning board. And in fact, the larger question is, when we were going over this with Andy Hamilton, is whether or not this is even a standard that should be in the land use ordinance. Because it's really not a land use requirement. So we may end up taking it out altogether. I don't think it hurts to leave it in, but
I think you should just leave it because it
Yeah.
talks about sanitary standards, so you have to have it. That's typical in Northern.
Where would it go? If it wasn't in the land.
it's already in the
It's
town
already in
sewer
here.
ordinance.
Oh, in the
It's just
separate
a planning
sewer.
board and we want to change it to board of select.
Right,
To be consistent with the sewer ordinance.
yeah,
Yeah, so it's not like a land use requirement, but I think it's fine to leave it in. Andy was struggling with it a little bit, but I think we just need to clarify. And then, Brian, I think has a couple other tweaks that I might just sneak in there since we're gonna modify the sewer ordinance at the same time. Not sneak in a bad way, just clarify.
Whoops.
So that's it. I'll tell you what else we're working on. Which you haven't seen yet, and then we're still trying to clarify. I actually went down a rabbit hole on the non-conforming section of the ordinance and just ratcheted back the whole, I think it needs a bunch of edits. But they're not critical. So this change that you're gonna see is really a very simplified version, which clarifies that the responsibility for determining nonconformity is two things. One, specifically, the planning board is responsible for determining nonconformities for water body setbacks. And then the code enforcement officer gets to determine nonconformities for other scenarios, even in the shoreline zone. So if you go to the planning board or meets the setback to the greatest practical extent, the planning board really is only looking at the water body setback, not the sideline setbacks.
so the CEO would be looking at a non-conforming lot that already has a structure on it that somebody's looking at, either enlarging or
Yep.
changing and making the lot more non-conforming.
Right, well, the lot wouldn't be more
No,
non-conforming,
it
but
would.
and the structure wouldn't be more non-conforming, it would be like, can you, so in Mount Desert, you can, when you're outside the shoreline zone, you can expand the structure, like as long as it's not more non-conforming as it relates to the setback.
Right.
So if you're like within the road setback, you can expand along the road setback. If it were a situation like, your lot is already over the maximum lot coverage requirement, you want to get a new building permit, you don't have to go to the.
So those type of issues would be dealt with by the
Correct.
CEO.
Yes.
Yeah, so
I got
like, for instance, I already had issued a permit. For a building that, excuse me, was torn down. It was within 250 of the highest annual tide, but it was like, I don't know, 150, 175 feet from the shore. So it wasn't a non-conformity due to setback from the water body. But the ordinance says planning board has jurisdiction of the shoreline zone, which is 250 feet.
Right.
So I can issue a new permit at 76 feet, which is still within the shoreline zone as long as it meets all setbacks, but where the town of Mount Desert has that setback notification waiver. That if somebody has a house that they wanna tear down at 150 or 175 feet, but still in the shoreline zone. And say it's currently 15 feet from the side or rear lot line, they have a 25-foot setback on the side and 25 on the rear. If the neighbor gives a setback release and is okay with it, then that should allow me to issue that permit. Because it's not relative to a water line or
Gotcha.
a stream or anything like that, it's to a property line. And I have done that without having the planning board review it.
So, yeah. I
It's
think-
just cleaning it up, making it,
I was gonna say, it'll definitely clarify things as
yeah, it
to
does.
where you go.
Yeah.
The other
Nope,
thing,
Gail's.
Gail,
Well, this is on a different topic, but if we looked at section 3.4, which moves nonprofits into the same
Oh,
category as conditional, as
we-
commercial.
we haven't looked at that one. We talked to Andy about that today. And probably we're just gonna drop it for this time around. The reason, a couple reasons. One is nonprofit is really an ownership, not a use. It's an ownership type. And so this just gets confusing. And what I think we should do actually is just take the table of allowed uses for the next town meeting and just create a new table that is inclusive of everything, but doesn't break it out by like, here's a residential category, here's a, public category, here's a commercial category. So they're all listed in one table, because that will eliminate a lot of some of the confusion sometimes. So and we still have a process through the planning board to go and say, well, how do, if I'm, like we did with, Green Rock. So if you have to come in and ask for a determination of this is a use similar, there's a process there. But I think it would be much, much cleaner just to have a table that doesn't have those breakdowns of, I'm not even sure where that came from. Like, to me, it creates it's a little too specific sometimes. So we're gonna drop that one. Yeah, thank you. Does that make sense to everybody? That approach? Okay. All right, the next one we have, we're gonna be, I have actually a draft and I think it's pretty good format. Kim and I just went over it today, adding standards to the ordinance, which currently already exist in another format for certificates of occupancy. So it deals with like tiny homes and some other things that we already have to do. So we have what
Yeah, we
it's
have
called a building.
we have a building code for the town of Mount Desert that was enacted years ago, 70s, and then it's been amended. And in 1998, the requirements for a certificate of occupancy was added to it. And that is the only area that requires or has any language relative to certificate of occupancy. So when UBEC came into effect, any town that had a building code, it no longer exists. You either adopt UBEC or you don't opt into it or adopt it. But yet, construction is still in compliance with the UBEC requirements, which is the Maine Uniform Building and Energy Code, in case anybody doesn't know what it means. Property owners if the local level doesn't enforce it at the local level, then they have to hire a third-party inspector to do the inspections for the UBEC compliance. So, because that building code no longer exists, it hasn't been repealed, it has to be. I want to move that language from that building code, which really isn't a building code, it's like a reference code telling me you've got to do, that the electrical's got to meet the NEC code, which is a national electrical code. We enforce NFPA 101 life safety codes relative to egress safety, that type of stuff. It refers you to like oil burner permits and licensing and where you gotta go, and liquid petroleum. It's like a reference. It isn't really a building code as far as I'm concerned. But, so we need to add that language, and I also wanted to add tiny homes in it, because there's two different types of tiny homes, there's manufactured or modular, and then there's stick-built. Stick-built would have to meet life safety. Manufactured or modular is exempt, but they have to have the third party, but meet MUBAG, so. But I wanted to add that into the ordinance and try to keep it all together. Instead of having separate ordinances, which, like I said, this building code, it doesn't exist anymore.
But they're not new things that the town.
Yeah,
is
they're not
adopting.
new.
These are things the town already does or has to do that are just
Right.
put into the appropriate place in the land use ordinance.
Find a new home for.
Yes.
Tough thing.
And the other one that we're working on is just a clarification on 6011 3.1 or something, and 3 and 4.1. There's a standard that deals with lots that have two, double road frontage, so a road on one side and the other side, and how you measure the setbacks. So if you have an access, the way that it currently reads is a little less clear than it could be, shockingly. That you when you're the way that you measure your road setback is really, which is the bigger setback.
Yeah.
Is from the part of your lot where you access the lot. So your driveway is on this road, then that's where your road setback will be measured from. And if you don't have access to the other road, then you have like a property line setback. So we're just adding some language to clarify that, that essentially, that it's more clear. That's the standard. And if you have access on both sides, then you have to meet setbacks from both
Right.
sides.
So if the setback is 30 feet where your driveway is, then the other side is 25,
Right.
if you have no access.
Right, exactly.
It's
Yeah.
not clear, and I had an MA that was, look,
Yeah,
it's not clear, so that's why I want to clear it up. That's how I've been interpreting it.
Absolutely,
The
yeah.
entrance was setback from the road was how you take access to your lot, but it's not clear.
And is it the edge of the road or the center of the road?
Edge.
Edge, yeah.
right. But we're not changing where you measure the
Yeah,
setback
nothing
from.
like that.
This is just what triggers what setback you have to meet. Is how you access your lot.
Gotcha.
For lots of double road frontage. Yep. We are also, I have a section that's basically just like definitions. I think I talked about this last time. So that's coming your way. We're still working with the planning board on the repeal and replace the subdivision ordinance. Short-term rental and vacation rental licensing ordinance, which I don't think is probably not a land use committee thing right now. I have I have like 2 drafts of a solar ordinance. So we did start working with a Climate to Thrive, who's been meeting with the sustainability committee and had a good presentation to the board of selectmen. So I understand the projects that they were talking about through the board. And we're kind of taking their draft and trying to figure out where it might fit in the ordinance. If we can get it done this year, we'll try to sneak it through. I don't know how it fits with the timing of what the things that the town might want to do for solar ordinances, but if you could wait like another town meeting time, it might be better to do that.
The next cycle,
Yes.
2025.
Yeah. And it
Probably
might not be
that's-
that hard, but I think it probably would be.
Probably that's when it would go before the voters anyway, if it was gonna be the standards for those types of things. Basically, all we've been providing approval for, is to, put a warrant before the town for the expense of the 3 lowest hanging fruit
Yep.
projects. And once that hurdle is cleared, then they can go forward for 2025 town meeting to actually give the go-ahead on the projects. But I think it was 270,000 to
It's like
do the
design.
study
Yeah. So
for
that.
those three locations.
Yeah,
And,
so I understood it. Yeah, you're moving into the design
correct.
and feasibility more in-depth feasibility now.
So that you
So
wouldn't
we
have,
a year to figure that out.
yeah,
And then I think there was some concern that, they want to be able to like jump right on it. And my suggestion would be, I'll work on it, but I just think it might be a bit of a rush.
it would be.
That
for
if I were-
2024.
Yeah, if I were working on as a designer, I would like just queue everything up for planning board approval of those projects for like July, whenever it's effective, you know?
In this year, there would be way too many unanswerable questions
Yeah, I think,
until those studies are done and the engineering studies are done, and you can have something concrete to give the townspeople so that
right,
they can wrap their head around something that, you know, they
yeah,
can envision it rather than just saying, what are these people talking about?
so I think we'll wanna work on the solar standard, I mean, it's not gonna, you know. I think there's pretty common drafts, but I think we wanna just take a little bit of time on it, and there's already quite a few things on the list, so I'm just wondering if that's.
That presentation was extremely helpful for me.
Yeah,
Because up until that presentation, for me, it was like, what are they talking about?
Yep.
Canopies over parking lots and the, oh my God.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I
the
mean,
car will stay clean.
they're super enthusiastic and very knowledgeable about that stuff, that type of project.
Yeah.
So I think our job is to think about it from that perspective, but also like, because we're adding it to the ordinance, other people are gonna be able to do it, so we wanna make sure it's like a balanced ordinance, you know? And they did talk about, is there a way to, should we think about exempting a municipal project? And I said, I don't think you wanna do that. I think you wanna just have an ordinance that applies, you know, to everybody, but. So there's that, and then, yeah, I think that's it.
What about access?
Didn't we just talk about access?
No.
Oh, right, we need to, we're still
This
trying
is
to
like
figure
the
out,
6 times going back to town meeting.
yeah. That is lot access 6B11, again, my new favorite section in the land use ordinance. Where currently we have these two provisions for lots that are created before May 15th of 2015. After that, where there's different standards that apply. What the town's attorneys are saying is that the way that we have it set up now actually opens up some liability questions that you really shouldn't have the code enforcement officer and the fire chief like making, you know, waiver decisions or something that's currently there. I think the system works out pretty good. But the way that I was thinking about this provision, and I feel like we're overthinking the whole thing, in that we should just have a policy that is, you know, the town's primary policy for lot access is that you provide safe access for emergency vehicles, and whatever the language says. And then all lots should have access to their lot by either a driveway or access to a road. There's ways that we can start to think about that, but it doesn't necessarily have to be in 6B11 that you are limited by the nonconformity of such road or driveway. So that if your lot is created, I think we've all already agreed to this, and I'm just trying to clarify it even more. Is that if your lot was built in, you know, 1972 or whatever, and it was created based on these set of standards, just because you haven't built on it doesn't mean, and then road standards changed over time, doesn't mean you shouldn't be able to build on it.
Your lot should be
Today.
grandfathered as a buildable lot.
Correct, unless you create a new lot. And in that case, the standards change,
Yeah, for the existing access to your lot
right?
would be the same.
Yes. So there's still gonna be that provision in the subdivision ordinance that allows the planning board to waive road requirements. Cause if the planning board can't do that in a land use ordinance, you can only do that in the subdivision ordinance. So
I
that
thought that section wasn't gonna reference by 14.
It isn't, I don't think it's going to.
Then how,
We're
then
gonna-
why would you have to reference the subdivision ordinance for a waiver if, as long as there's a driveway that meets, has a driveway, or a street, private road that provides safe access for fire or emergency vehicles, as long as it has a legally deeded right of way or ownership of the road? Why would you need,
Well, if you're creating a new lot, do you want to be able to go to the planning board and get
why would you, why would you have to require that if currently that person has right of way on an existing roadway, whether it's ownership or right of way, to a public road from a private road? Before, when we had the minimum width of lot on a road, there was no mention about the current condition of the existing private road that serves that lot from the public way.
yeah,
As long as it, yes, provides safe access for emergency vehicles. And if there's a question, maybe we can have Mike just look at it, you know what I mean, but say, so he doesn't damage the trucks, yeah, you gotta cut back some branches, or there's a tree, or there's a corner too sharp, maybe widen it, create pull-offs, but I mean, and like that first sentence you put on the one, something to the effect that safe access, something to the effect that if there's a question or concern, maybe have the fire chief go look at it or something.
yeah, I think that's what Andy's gonna say, we don't want in.
I know he's gonna say that, but
Trying to get away.
it's just right now, the way it's, and right now, because Andy wants this to go back to what it initially said, where regardless, you're on a private road and you want to develop your lot, you gotta go to the planning board. That's what he wants.
No.
And it's not, that's how it was at first, when we created this. So it doesn't matter when you want to create. He wants planning board jurisdiction because they have the authority to waive it under the subdivision ordinance.
Yeah.
But I just don't like, I mean, but yet, if like, say, no, it's 3 lots in front of me. And, wants to develop his lot, and then for some reason I go a year or 2 later, saying the ordinance didn't change, and I get denied for some reason, how's that fair?
Right.
I agree.
Mhm.
I mean, because currently they're saying that it's like, no, wants to go, and in 3 months I wanna go, I wanna do something on my lot, I gotta go to the planning board too. Even though he got approval 3 months ahead of me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
I just think it's too much wasted time on the planning board,
It is.
and if they got it, why wouldn't I get it, and it's just, you gotta have
And if-
surveys, you gotta have.
But if Noel's lot is before your lot, and your lot, we don't know the condition of the road from Noel's lot to your lot, that could be the question, right? If your lot is before Noel's lot, then you should just be gracefully given the permit. But if it's after, I can see why you might, because it might not be as much of a road. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
I see what you're saying, totally, yeah.
So it depends on how far down that road you have to go.
I think these are,
It's picky and stuff.
and it's simpler when you're
Picky
talking
on-
about an existing lot. But it gets more complicated if I took my 10-acre lot at the end of a road.
Right.
That's a lot narrower than the current standards and decided I wanted to split it in half.
And give it one to each one of your kids.
Yeah, but then you're
That's
creating
not
a different set of
something-
conditions than that.
Granted, you have 2 more lots into that roadway, but,
Yeah. So
I mean,
that-
again, I think that should be a call for the fire chief.
But if it was okay for one lot,
So it's added
How do you know it was okay?
passage,
because
more development,
Yeah.
more chance.
Then you've only got 1 car going in and 1 coming out, but 2 lots might have 1 going in and 1 coming out at the same time.
we do that on my road all the time. Just.
Yeah.
Stir the pot.
I still
mean,
think a whole nother conversation should be road standards, like. But
I mean, I live on a dirt road in Northeast Harbor. There are very few of them.
It's hard thing, will ya?
Yeah. Get some pull-offs.
Yeah, we do, it's called Summit Road.
Yeah, nice.
I don't know, but I think we're
Oh,
gonna
my God.
be at that one for a while.
Yeah, I think what I did in the version that Kim and I looked at, I was just like, this is dumb. Why are we even doing this? Let's just cut all this and say this and this. And then I think Andy's gonna have a hard time with it. That's what I'm trying to figure
I
out.
mean, I suppose we can check with Mike Bender to see what the statistics are as far as getting access to properties that he's been called to and how often it is he can't get there.
But that makes the taxpayer be at the mercy of the size of the fire equipment, right?
Yes,
If the oil truck can get to you and the garbage man can get to you, it's not that homeowner's fault
Well, no,
that the
but,
fire trucks are too big.
well, I mean, as long as the UPS, you know, and FedEx can get there, that's all people seem to care about, and I hear that all the time. Well, UPS and the garbage truck can get there. Okay,
Maybe we
What
should
about
put
the
the new
ambulance?
hoses.
you know, what about the ambulance and the fire truck? Or a police car, you know, they're getting bigger too, you know.
well, the principle in the policy is gonna be safe access for emergency vehicles.
Yes.
It's not safe access for, the town doesn't care if UPS can get there or not. This is the.
I'm not
town's-
saying that to a lot of people,
You
that's
know?
said to me.
Yeah, the town doesn't care. The town your job is not to worry about UPS and FedEx.
Okay, but I went back to the garbage man, he's very important,
Yeah,
It's life safety standards.
yes.
garbage, life safety, it's right there in that short-term
In
rental.
New York,
ordinance.
I'm sure garbage is a life safety.
But without getting into in like a much larger discussion about like
Size of your truck.
all those things. It's still like, if you had a pre-existing lot that has access right now, I mean, there is a process by which you can go and talk to the planning board and get approval to do that, but it just seems like I think what we're trying to do is move away from that policy, and also our attorneys are saying that, well, it was a good try, but it's really puts more liability on making waivers on a group of two employees that really don't have that authority,
Mhm.
potentially. So I think there may be a way just to simplify it, which may probably backfire on the at 2025's town meeting. We'll be back to tweaking it.
Simplifying is always good.
Sometimes it is, Rick. Sometimes it backfires on you. Yeah. So.
But then you have something to fix.
Yep,
That has
Sure.
purpose.
anyway, I was just trying to make it easier for people that already have have a lot that's been accessible forever.
Right. Yeah, and that's the kind of stuff we should be looking at.
Yeah, but recognizing that you do a different,
Prefacing your comment at the very beginning of this discussion.
Yeah.
Was, I think we've been overthinking this.
yes.
Huh.
We have. Okay,
Shocking.
that's where we are.
Can I just ask, we've talked off and on about the Sylvan City area in Northeast Harbor and how that's a bunch of small little lots.
Mhm.
And it's kind of it's a gem in its own little way in that it's affordable housing or had been historically affordable housing.
Mhm.
Is there any way we can make that a district so that you can't buy three houses, tear them down and build your McMansion, that it has to stay small little lot and recognize it as a historic district or a special district or a working, because I mean, there is a change going on there now,
Yep,
but the change still keeps every lot small. So far, people haven't bought contiguous lots and started tearing them down, but that's kind of an important little district.
yeah. So I think that is something that we can explore both on the comprehensive plan
Yes.
side. And also, once we tidy these up, one of the exercises that we had talked about doing is sort of going through and thinking about, okay, are the dimensional standards for these areas really appropriate for
Mhm.
what we are thinking about for
Yes.
these areas? So I would add that to the conversation. And then there are things we could do to create a maximum lot size as well as a minimum lot size.
Right, so this is kind of the reverse of that, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
which is kind of interesting.
I think we might want to move on that sooner than later, because
Sure, okay,
that train's already starting to leave the station.
got it. Well, we can work on it.
Thank you.
Maximum lot area, yep, so I brought the map.
I think that's a great idea, Katrina.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think
Yeah, and it's already a weird zone.
it's actually, isn't it commercial?
It's village commercial. Yep,
Which is fine,
yeah.
because I mean, you've got 3 plumbing shops there.
Yeah,
And
I
a
don't,
carpentry shop.
yeah. To me, I think that was one of those zones that I was like, there's a few other ones that just sort of pop up. They're like, what?
Mhm.
But we ought to look at it. Yeah,
I think we gotta look at zoning in general.
yep,
I just don't want us to lose this important little area where there are little houses on little lots.
mhm.
Having grown up on that road,
Yeah.
it's really sad to see what's happening there.
Yes,
I mean, be under control, but it's not what it used to be.
right.
Which, I mean, the whole island's not what it used to be, I understand that, but
My big push these days is, I talk a lot about housing all over the place, and then there's a lot of people that are like, well, there's nothing we can do about it, and people are, if you can live here, great, you're lucky to live here, and if not, it's okay to drive from Hancock to work here, and I just think that's kind of a cop-out, like, we have to actually do things
But if
to
we,
make it so that people can try to live here.
but if we can make certain areas almost unattractive because of the small size of the lots, and therefore the small size of the houses, that might be a help.
Yeah, that's
Kind of like enterprise zones,
yeah, it's a really interesting
I
idea.
only spent 7 years there.
that cities do.
Yep,
I didn't grow up there.
yep,
My neighbor lives in Portsmouth and they have the same problem. And they've been making, I guess you could call them tiny homes,
Mhm.
rental. And they keep them under $900.
Mhm.
And so people can actually rent a house and save money or buy a house.
I think, isn't there a tiny home rental project in Bangor?
there is, but it
Yeah.
seems like the rents are kind of.
Yeah, that's what
I
I thought.
thought somewhere like 1,700, does that sound right?
Maybe it included the heat.
I don't know.
I don't
know.
think it's up to 1,700, but it's not really affordable.
No.
I think it's more around 1,000, 1,100, 1,200, but for a tiny home.
Right.
all right,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else from the online group, Jared?
Yep, the town wants me to appoint somebody to the comprehensive plan committee.
I'm
And-
on it.
You're already on it, but Gail expressed an interest in being the liaison for our group, so you can both be on it, but one of you should decide who wants to be the formal liaison. You can arm wrestle or
Okay.
No.
what do you think, Gail?
It doesn't matter to me. I will help in any capacity I can. Or Katrina and I could be co-liaisoners or something.
There's still an open seat on the committee. But
You mean,
Katrina's already on, but if we appoint Gail to be the liaison, that sort of automatically fills the seat on the committee, and then it's got more people on it.
Move appointment. I second that. Moved and seconded, all in favor? Aye.
Katrina, you okay with that, Katrina?
Sure.
Okay, good, then I'm in favor of it too.
All right,
I'll see you there.
so exciting.
One more committee, yay.
It's gonna be awesome. I actually think the comp plan is gonna be great.
Should
I
be,
mean-
it's shaping up to be
I think it's gonna be,
a good group.
it's a great time now to be working on your comp plan. It's,
Yep.
It's really, really important. And if we do it like, focus on some more engagement and not necessarily like all the data, that would be great.
I do know someone that would like to help with the history part of the,
Awesome.
should they be in touch with you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, love it. And also, less words is good words
Yeah, I can't
when it
promise
comes to the
that.
comp plan. That's my, it's very hard to do in practice, but yeah, let's focus on the goals and strategies and like really thinking about how we're gonna implement some things. This part, like, there's a real interesting cultural thing happening in Mount Desert. I think it's kind of interesting. I mean, I obviously dork out about stuff like that, but it's, but I mean, I don't know, I live in Southwest Harbor too, and I feel like this year is the first year I've noticed Southwest Harbor is much more like Northeast Harbor.
Oh, is it the construction?
No, it was, I think it's just people. Yeah, Sawyer's is close, I mean, like, things are changed over there, it's different, it's a weird time. But a lot of it has to do with, like, there's nobody living in town.
Oh, that changed.
Yes,
Southwest used to be a town that everybody lived there year round.
yes. Anyway, that's my sermon, that's my TED talk. All right, Thank you.
Adjournment, are we done? Motion to adjourn?
Mhm.
Second. Jerry, come on.
I, sir, second it.
All right.
All right. Thank you.